make me feel like a king. That's what I mean by gold dreams. And they gon' get up on this smooth shit one day. And you could even bang this cut on a Sunday, Monday. A bunch of Blake Griffins with them clippers. A Chris Paul throwing lives to us all. It's more than a cut, you don't need no stitches for this. Walk around with your missus for this. They know it's squizzy, but we gon' say exquisite for this. Exquisite for this. Put your sons, put your pops, put your neighbors on it. That flavor on it, then finish it with a razor on it. Because it's more than a cut though. I swear it's more than a cut. Now grab a mirror.
In my day, barber was a counselor, fashion expert, style coach, pimp, just general all-around hustler. All the 66 years I lived, I said all them things a long time ago. But I say this here, I'm still pretty.
Peace, everybody. Abarigani. Hotep. What's happening? Assalamu alaikum. You're watching the Supremely Faded podcast with the Supreme Style Barbers. We are in the building. We're back. Had a week off. I was out of town. But we got the Supreme Style Barbers in the building. Saeed's here.
Hey.
B's in the building. He's cutting. This is how we get down. And we got a special guest because we want to talk about something controversial. Good morning, Miss Walletta. Miss Donnie's in the building. And Mrs. Tracy Lavalley Muhammad is in the building. Daryl Kuntz is in. We're rocking this morning. We want to talk about something, like I said, controversial. We got my brother in the building, Brother Henry Mobley. And we're going to be talking about, like I said, something a little controversial. And let me tell you why I want to talk about this. I saw a documentary. How long ago was it? It wasn't that long ago. Maybe a couple of months ago. And it was on Netflix, and it was called How to Change Your Mind. And it was about, interestingly enough, psychedelics. It was about shrooms. It was about LSD. It was about what's the other one called? MDMA. And it was also about peyote. And they were talking, and even they also talked about high doses of nicotine, interestingly enough. And so we've been having this conversation because before I saw this documentary, my thinking about shrooms, I really didn't have an understanding. I just knew that it was something that drug addicts used on the regular in the club, you know, to get out of their mind. And interestingly enough, I just thought that the name shrooms was actually a street name, but they were some sort of drugs that somebody just came up with. I'm just telling you about my own ignorance with regards to this, right? So, but after watching this documentary, man, I was totally intrigued because I learned so much. And as barbers, man, we have everybody in the world coming through the spot, from anywhere from street dudes all the way to doctors and lawyers, right? So one of my good clients who's been coming to the shop for a few months now. 4 months. I learned that he is into psychedelic therapy, for better lack of a word. So we wanted to bring Brother Henry on so that we can talk about the myths, the misconceptions, and the truth about psychedelics. So, Brother Henry, the stage is yours, sir. Tell us about yourself.
My name is Henry Mobley. It's a pleasure. Thank you all for having me for today. This is such an honor. I will be fully transparent since that's how affirmative. This is my first podcast I've been a guest on, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm going to try to tamper down. He just told me it was live. I didn't realize that. That was probably purposeful, probably a good idea. So we're going to do our best, but thank you in advance for your grace and patience with me as I move through this. So, I started my psychedelic journey, 2010, 2011. And it came because of, not for myself, it actually came for my girlfriend at the time. She was struggling with depression and some other things, and she had been on the constant search for how she was going to really battle this. And of course, what she was really trying to do is making sure that she didn't have to go down the rabbit hole of pharmaceuticals that oftentimes that can be helpful, but can also be so detrimental depending on how they're used.
Right.
And so as she went through, she landed on ayahuasca. Ayahuasca's gotten very popular over the last few years, but at the time, back in 2010, people still were trying to kind of figure it out. Certainly, at least up here, not so much down south where we ended up going. And she thought this was going to be the answer. The only reason I got into all of this is because I read one piece of an article that said when somebody utilizes ayahuasca to go through it, oftentimes when they come back, they can't communicate. They have a really difficult time to express themselves after their experience.
Right.
And I thought to myself, I won't be able to talk to my girlfriend won't be able to talk to me. So I said, all right, well, I'm going with you. I'm going to go with you. And that's how it all began. And it has proven to be one of the single greatest things I have ever done for myself.
Right.
Those ceremonies down in South America, now almost 15 years ago, I carry with me every single day. They perpetuate every parts of my life, my work, my social life, my relationship with myself. It is truly one of the greatest gifts I could have given to myself, and it happened accidentally.
Okay. So let's go a little deeper into that. Like you said, it's called ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that. What exactly is ayahuasca?
So ayahuasca, when taken in ceremony, is a combination of both the leaf and the root of the plant. It's used by indigenous communities in many places. Particularly for us, I was in South America, in Peru, in a temple just outside of Iquitos. It's called the Temple of the Way of the Light, if you're ever interested in looking at it. And the shamans there are shamans that this is what their families do.
Right.
For thousands of years. So the ancient wisdom that's available at that temple is breathtaking in its depth. The people there are as beautiful and as open as you could possibly be, and so it's very powerful. The substance is given generally in ceremony in a liquid form. Mm-hmm. So once you imbibe it, I will tell you, it's probably like nothing you've ever had before. The best way I could describe it for myself, laughingly, it was if someone had taken a hot coal and had set it on fire and then put it in my stomach.
Wow.
And that was the intensity of the medicine. So I don't want to lie to anyone. It's an incredibly physically intense experience. But I put that out there because much like every psychedelic has a different way of interacting with the body and a different way of doing things. Ayahuasca, very powerful. And after about 45 minutes or so, for most people, and it could vary, there's usually a bit of purging involved.
Right.
And what's beautiful about that is when we first stepped to the temple, we spent, before we even started our ceremony, the first day, we actually learned how to purge. We were given warm lemongrass water.
Right.
Drink a bunch of it, fill your stomach, and eventually it's got to come out.
Right.
And it both helps your body relax into the purge that happens. It also helps with that mental and emotional state that we all have of, oh, I don't want to throw up. Oh, I must not, I can't hold myself, I can't hold my liquor. Everybody's a punk if you can't do it. It normalizes that and relaxes that because we were doing it in community. And it reminds you that these things about you, removing this stuff from you, both physically, mentally, emotionally, this is so important. It's so necessary. So once you've gotten kind of some of that training and you're in ceremony, the effects of ayahuasca are varied, but you'll hear a lot of people will tell you that obviously there's visuals, right? There's a lot of visuals that happen. People will tell you that they become one with the universe, that they find the face of God, that they touch their ancestors, that they are surrounded by spirits who are coming to help and advise them. I was fortunate enough in this first experience doing a ceremony, you have these wonderful shamans that they're singing to you as you were going through the experience. These ikaroses, which are songs that come directly from the spirits through the shamans and then delivered to you. And they're done in their native language, and it's such a powerful experience as it holds you and it brings you from this earthly grasp into a place that is beyond words.
Right. Wow. Wow, Sayyid, you got any questions?
Bro, I'm just sitting here just listening to you, man. That just sounds like an experience of a lifetime.
It is, and I will tell you that in this case, ayahuasca it definitely can take a toll on you.
Right.
The experiences for us, our ceremonies are usually anywhere from 4 to 5 hours. Once you come out, you find yourself oftentimes very physically drained.
Right.
Then the next day is usually just gonna chill for a second. We're gonna lie in a hammock. We're gonna journal some, take some time to reflect. So it's a whole body experience. And as I talk to you, there's a physical component as it is working with some of the toxins in your body, the toxins that your body's holding because of your mental and your emotional stresses. We oftentimes don't remember that it's body, mind, spirit.
Right.
And anything that affects you in any way, other parts of you are going to try to compensate.
Yes.
Right? Your body's going to fill itself with things that it may not need in hopes to try to support you.
Right.
And ayahuasca and that work with the shamans and how they handle you mentally and emotionally, but there's that physical component that's happening as well. Right?
So it's a detoxifying.
It can be, yes, very much so. And they talk very much about, even in the smallest amounts, ayahuasca has proven to pull things from the body and to help the body heal. And that's why it's such a beautiful and powerful substance. And this is, and because of this, you take this aside, this is why as you start talking about all psychedelics, right, whether they be natural, whether they be plant-based, or whether they be manufactured, in the case of like LSD, or ketamine, or MDMA.
Right.
There is, everything does things a little differently. So it's really, as you start your discovery, if you're really interested in this, and I hopefully the people who are watching us do take this as an invitation, there is so much information that you can go and look about how you want to engage in psychedelics. There's no one size fits all.
Right.
Don't ever let anyone tell you that you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. Hello, sir. Hello, sir. And it's really important that as you take this journey, you take it as a personal journey, a personal discovery.
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. So let's do this. Let me give us some information about you. We got Apostles in the building. Big Troy's in the building. Travis in the building. He should be in the room, but he's in the building.
You at, Trav?
Sister Sherelle's in the building. King Czar's in the building. Peace to everybody watching. Brother Henry has a website. It's hm3.io. And he teaches and does some therapeutic work with people around these psychedelics. So we're gonna give you that information fully throughout the show. But here's a picture of his homepage to his website, and you'll definitely want to get in contact with him after the show if you're interested. I wanted to switch gears a little bit, Brother Henry, and just talk about, because we're talking about ayahuasca, and I don't know if that's something that people have to go to South America in order to experience, but on a more local level, we have shrooms. And like I was saying in the opening, you know, my thinking about shrooms initially, my ignorance was that it was an illegal drug that, you know what I'm saying, crackheads and drug users and partiers use to get zooted out of their mind, right? And I never understood the fact that shrooms are actually mushrooms.
It's not trying to trick you, brother. Not trying to trick you.
It's the name. And it's a natural substance. And they can be used therapeutically. And they have some very beneficial health effects that shrooms don't have any that I know of side effects. It's not a thing to where you're getting high. It's different, right? So let's talk about shrooms a little bit.
So I want to start by saying I appreciate the awareness. So I'm a consciousness coach. Right? I really work on performance and optimization with my clients. I also act as a psychedelic integration specialist. So what that means, and you'll find different versions of it, but what it means for me in my work is utilizing those folks who have had a psychedelic experience after doing it on their own and want to bring it into their work, want to bring it into their businesses and how they do business to really elevate that consciousness. Or if they want to utilize it in conjunction with the work we're doing live. And there's an opportunity to do that. So, but yes, mushrooms are fantastic. I cannot tell you. I mean, this inside they're fantastic.
That's the logo. That's the slogan.
So my experience, really, I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, but there's a lot of great information. But I can talk about what mushrooms have been for me, both from what I would call maybe a casual use, and also then as even a ceremonial use.
Right.
So, mushrooms, as you said, you can find them anywhere. You can go out and go into the woods and you can find them. I would not advise that because some of them can be incredibly dangerous, incredibly poisonous. At every level, just because I'm fully transparent, imbibing what they might call magic mushrooms, your body is going to attempt to reject it. If you take them in the raw form, even the dry form, you might get an upset stomach. Right? So you're going to feel that a little bit. That's okay, very normal, it passes. But again, the type of mushroom, the dosage, and everything else, that's going to really contribute to that. So please be very educated before you go down this path. Can't stress that enough.
Right.
With that being said, in a casual way, low doses, even micro doses, which are where a lot of people start, they can be so mind-opening, right? We talk about often mind-altering when you talk about the movie you look at How to Change Your Mind, when they're often talking about really effective dosages. They talk about the altered state of consciousness that you can fall into. But before you get to that, you start with microdosing small amounts. You can actually find what I call creates kind of a crack, right? It's a bit of an invitation for exploration. Mushrooms, psilocybin is such a beautiful substance. I don't know if you know this, but mushrooms, they actually communicate with each other.
Right.
They know that if you go out and you find them for thousands of miles throughout forests and everything, there are these networks that happen.
Right.
And that's how I look at taking psilocybin. It fosters connection. It fosters connection with yourself. It fosters connection with others. Now, that's been a big part of the work that I've done why I moved to Denver, is to go down that path of how can we shift the consciousness of our world through our connection. It's one of our greatest powers.
Right.
And that's one of the great things that psilocybin does. We talk about oftentimes the effects of, you've heard that it can help with addiction, that it can help with depression, it can help with other mental or emotional challenges. At the same time, we've often talked about, because of how psilocybin can work, it can be challenging for those who may be suffering from other mental challenges where that may not be suitable. So again, before you consider it, please consult a physician, please consult whoever is helping you with your health, do some research before you go down that path.
Right.
But with that being said, it produces in you oftentimes a freeing effect.
Right.
The visuals are great. Auditory cues, they're great. You'll hear people say, oh, I see things. People say that, oh, music sounds better. And what I've often found for me is taking mushrooms truly anchors me in the present.
Right.
Before you start flying or doing anything else, and we talk about taking hero doses, where for the average person that may be somewhere around 3 to 5 grams of mushrooms. Certainly when I say grams, it's usually on a fresher, fresh taking them. It's a hero dose. But on the smaller doses, it creates this anchor to the present. The reason why food starts tasting better, that music sounds lovelier, that conversations you fall into deeper, is because you are present.
Right.
Where we need to be. Right? You're not thinking about what's going on in 30 minutes or what happened 5 years ago or anything else. You are centrally rooted in this spot, which is so powerful for us because it's so hard to get there.
Right. Okay, so here's the question. My wife asked the question.
Okay.
Does it help with people that have issues with alcoholism? And you kind of touched on it a little bit. Does it help with people that have issues with alcoholism? And is it safe in people who have anxiety or bipolar disorder? I read that some psychedelics can cause very negative side effects in some mentally ill, but it's not well studied.
Yes, and so she is very astute, and thank you for that. It has been known to help with addiction, alcohol, cigarettes, things of that nature. I do know personally many people who suffer from anxiety utilizing mushrooms, especially microdosing, and they say that it's one of the most incredibly powerful things for them in doing so. But again, please consult someone before you do it, and if you do decide to do it yourself, small doses.
Right.
Right. And when I say small doses, I'm talking something like maybe 50 milligrams, maybe 30 milligrams, like really small doses.
Right.
What I found with those people who are microdosing, especially if you have fast metabolism, you can try taking them before you go to bed.
Right.
That's actually how I started taking them. I didn't take them out, like while I'm worried about at work, whatever. So I would take them before I went to bed. I took 70 milligrams, and it's amazing. When I would wake up, I would describe it as a psychic sigh.
Right.
It would keep this bubble of just clarity, of evenness, none of that bullshit that's is waiting for you outside the bubble to get in. As long as you could hold that for 30 minutes, an hour, and then go from there. But the long-term effects I started to see, and this was just in general with psychedelics, is just shit that doesn't bother you.
Right.
It's less. I think it's less about it attacking or working against a set of anxiety or anything else. I think that for me, it just started to create the space of my own sovereignty.
Right.
It really enhanced the idea that I am a divine being.
Right.
I want all of you to understand that you are the gods and goddesses of your own universe, and you need to act accordingly. Seriously, right? And whether you're getting it through the medicine, whether you're getting it through the word, whether you're getting it through a mentor or family, however you're finding it, but understand that y'all need to stop acting up and need to start acting like you are the divine, the divinity that you are. Now, this doesn't mean that we are not still human, that we all do not still respond to what I like to call the reptilian. We got to do the reps, right? You got to practice stuff. You got to do this, right? We all understand that. But there's a level of your own consciousness that truly gets, if not amplified, psychedelics, especially mushrooms, can do a wonderful job of reintroducing you to it. You know, many times I believe that when people talk about, oh, we're trying to get to enlightenment, or trying to become the big ball of light, I believe that's where we started.
Right.
Right? We are that.
That part.
Right? And it's what's happened is there's been just things that we have allowed to separate us from that divinity. And those could come from familial beliefs, ethnic, cultural beliefs, traumas that have gone on, doom scrolling, watching too much TV, or whatever, maybe not having a conversation we have. These are things that separate us from that divinity. So you don't need to rush to it. You don't need to get it. You are it. We need to fall back into it if we're going any direction. And psychedelics, oftentimes, in the work in doing them, especially doing them through ceremony, doing them with those who truly understand the effects and can help you with that, having the powerful integration afterwards, which is why I love to do the work that I do, because it's great to be in the substance, great to be in the substance, how do you integrate afterwards?
Right.
That is the level of conscious work that then brings you closer to the person that you are.
Yes, sir. And Sister Vanessa's in the building. Peace, Queen. She asked the question, are you from here?
So I was originally born in Ohio, but I moved here 4 months ago from Oakland, California.
Yes, sir. Awesome. But you do your work here.
I do my work here, yes.
Absolutely.
I'm here in Lakewood, Colorado.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's talk about the myths and the misconceptions. How did these substances, which clearly, of course, they're plants, like you said, you can find them anywhere. How did they become criminalized? How did they become, how did I think the way I thought about shrooms? You know what I'm saying? How did that happen?
Well, so what I do is I will point out, again, there's some great experts, some great reading that you can do out there, and I'm sure after the podcast we'll have a reading list and some links you can go to. But what I will share with you is, I think first and foremost, let's talk about how psychedelics have been criminalized and stigmatized over the course of the years. One of the reasons why we're having this conversation here is because this year marks the 50th year anniversary of the end of Project MK Ultra. And you all have Google. You can all look up MK Ultra. We don't need to go down the rabbit hole, but effectively, it was an illegal CIA sponsored and funded experiment that began in the 1950s. It was a counter program because of the belief in the Cold War that the Russians had actually come up with mind controlling drugs.
Right.
And so the CIA and the U.S. government wanted to take their own take on creating, I think that the original stint, and everyone can fact check me, was really to create a truth serum, right, for interrogation. Is really where it came from. But there were over 140 different sub-projects that came out of MK Ultra. Mind control, torture,
right,
all sorts of things that they were doing. Unfortunately, to test this, well, because of what they're trying to do, human testing pretty much started right out of the box, and they utilized mental health wards and prisons, and unfortunately targeted African Americans, and especially African American men, prisoners or people who were known to already be utilizing drugs. There were even programs where they traded heroin for people's willingness to come in and be experimented on. And these were done through 80 plus different organizations, universities.
Wow.
Both in the United States and in Canada. It wasn't really revealed until the 1970s. The program was eventually officially shut down in 1973.
Right.
And then when, during the Nixon era, as Watergate was coming out and CIA files were being released, things started coming out in the late 70s. And it was just, I get a little emotional about it because, forgive me.
Right.
When I talk about this stuff, I'm not looking for retribution. I'm not looking for really anything. when I went to the MAPS conference in Denver and heard no one talking about it, no one bringing up that much of the science that we have around psychedelics, even as we're trying to use them for these therapeutic use, came on the backs of
black
those atrocities of black people. But the worst crime, if there can be a worse crime, I'm not a big fan of comparatives. It's about how now these substances, especially in their natural form, have been stolen from our community because of the stigmas that are created. Whether it be because if you're black and breathing, you're more likely to go to jail if you have drugs than if you get a book deal.
Right.
And now you've been further separated by creating the stigma of shrooms are just this party drug that crackheads are using up in the club.
Right.
Brother Herman could have been using psychedelics for all sorts of things, but he assumed that they were this or they were that. And that's been fostered. And that has not only suffered, our community not only suffered from that, but all communities have suffered from that. Right. So this renaissance that has now happened over the last 10, 20 years, it's a beautiful thing as people start to understand that psychedelics, and especially mushrooms, are not this. They can be something else. So this part of the work that I'm trying to do is to how do we reduce, how do we eliminate the stigma? How do we, especially as African Americans, if we buy into the narrative, and I will simply call the narrative that we're on our own, that we are going to have to be the stewards of our own healing, that we will have to be the stewards of our own growth, of our own evolution. If that is the narrative that you wish to operate from, then psychedelics, and especially in their natural form, can be a powerful ally in doing so.
Wow. That's big, man. Right? And we got to be right in that. Brother Apostle points out the fact that they're not plants, they're entheogens. Yes, sir.
Yes,
they grow, brother. Appreciate that. Appreciate the correction.
Thank you.
Michael Thompson's in the building. Trav, he said, "Let's do some."
Big
Mike. Trav said, "Let's go. Let's get it." Michael Brewer Lewis, peace, God. Roger K. Clendening is in the building. Peace, peace, peace. Brother Jeff's in the building. Government mind control sounds like that Tyrone movie I watched last night.
Tell Brother Jeff you gotta watch it again.
Watch it again, Brother Jeff. That's what it is, though. Hey, we know who Tyrone is. We're gonna talk about that next week. Look, that's powerful, man. The therapeutic use of shrooms, of mushrooms, of these psychedelics. Okay.
it's a lot. Well, and one thing I want to mention is that right now a lot of people they look at other indigenous folks, whether it could be Native American, here if we're looking at this part of the country, or tribes from the Southwest that really were instrumental in harvesting DMT, in the beginning in its natural form. But then we talk about South America. Obviously, ayahuasca is very prevalent there. We can go over to, our homelands in Africa and the beautiful, iboga plant is just there. Our brothers and sisters in the South, utilizing peyote. But and so it's oftentimes which isn't such a bad thing. It's all the plant medicines from the brown folks.
Right.
However, one thing I want to invite is that psychedelics and plant medicine are, in their natural form, are everywhere.
Right.
Every culture throughout the world has had access to some version of this, right? And every culture has had not only access to it, but has utilized it in beautiful, powerful, ceremonial ways. So when you are going on your journey, when you're starting to investigate, I invite you to go back and look at your specific culture. How did your culture utilize it? Was it ceremony? Was it coming of age? Was it for births, for deaths? Was it for greater communication? Was it before the hunt? Was it for healing? Was it for, what was it for?
Right.
Do that work, because one, it shows the hyper accountability that you're willing to take on for yourself, for your own learning and for your thing. So let's make sure we're doing that. But two, if we all do that, now as we come forward to where do we want psychedelics to go in the future? How do we want to utilize it both clinically, ceremonially, casually, what legislation we want to make, if everyone's coming from that place of a deep understanding of where your people came from, no matter what you look like, then I think we can have really open-hearted, clear, conscious communication that's going to afford us the ability to move forward with this community.
Yes, sir. And let me say this too, man. Let me state this for the people in the room as well. Like, this is also about intention. One of the important things that you stated was that we're all gods. But we don't realize that we're all gods because we've been covered over by what I like to call the dross of this world. We're covered by the food that we eat, by the air that we breathe, by the things that we drink, by all of the things that we take into our bodies, all the toxins that are all around us that are stifling our growth, our development to become gods, right? So the psilocybin or shrooms is street name or regular name, however you want to say it.
We always just like to call it the medicine.
That medicine, I mean, literally, like you said, the connective tissue that mushrooms have, that they communicate with one another, that it opens up certain pathways in our brains that have been closed off by our environment.
And not only our brains, but also our hearts.
Right.
Right? Because, one of the things, if you want to change someone's mind, change the heart. Right? Let them know that you see them, that you hear them, that you know them, that you love them. And one of the beautiful things about the medicine is that it just simply amplifies what's already there in infinity, our ability to do that, and our desire to do that. We oftentimes get so siloed, get so closed off in the mad grasp for power or resources or to keep up with the Joneses or any of those things. And what I offer is that this is a way for us to step away from that maelstrom of noise, that just constant, just brain against your soul. It gives you an opportunity to give yourself an opportunity to be at peace with yourself, which then allows you to extend that peace into others. And that's what we're really trying to do.
Look, Apostle says I took I took some 2 stems and 2 caps of mushroom strain called the Golden Teachers. I don't know what that is.
Golden Teachers.
And the ceiling started breathing. Then I turned on some music and the African mask on my wall knew all the words to DMX.
I believe you.
Absolutely.
Apostle was on a trip. He took a trip. Go ahead, Sayyid.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How would this medicine help children with ADHD, attention, issues in school? Are there microdoses on a daily or maybe every other day that?
Yeah. So I've actually, and this is again, we're dealing with the children. We want to be hyper careful. Is there a potential that a microdosing might help with that? Potentially. I think it is. I think, again, it's one of those things where we want to make sure that we're really dialed in before we look at the health, when it comes to the health of the child. We want to make sure, but ADHD can be so misdiagnosed oftentimes. It's become this catch-all oftentimes for any child or any person that can't seem to focus or whatever have you. So what I would offer is this: before we step down with the medicine, let's make sure that that's what we're actually working with, right? Let's make sure that maybe that the child just has a different learning style, right? Maybe they just don't need to be cooped up, right? Maybe they get some other things. Let's look at that first, because again, these are not silver bullets, right? What they are allies. They are in the work, but we want to make sure that we are coming with not only good intent, but also our bodies are where they need to be to do this work, especially for doing the deep work. When I didn't mention this, but when I did my first trip, my first ceremony was ayahuasca, for 3 weeks prior, for the birth point, severe dietary restrictions. Everything good you might want, we weren't allowed to have, right? Even the reduction of our media consumption, TV, music, things that poor conversations. So we really want to make sure that before we go down that route, we're not We're really the intention and understanding what we're doing before you adjust the meds.
So, do you think that if people are not getting the results that they're desirous of, it could be dietary based and
it could be a number of factors. Remember, this is a system, right? So while psilocybin can be incredibly powerful and any psychedelic can be incredibly powerful, it is going to react to your system.
Right.
Whether it be in many of the cases, what's going on physically, many of them, what's going on with you mentally, and almost always what's going on with you emotionally.
Brother Jeff asked the question, can you talk about Mike Tyson and the psychedelic toad?
Licking the toad. So I'm not sure if I know everything about it, but by hearing the toad, what they are probably referring to is DMT.
Yep.
Right. So DMT was when it first started off because it is also manufactured as well. But DMT is harvested from a particular toad from their glands. They have a gland that it's harvested from, and that gland can be taken, then it can be dried. And then it can be ingested orally. It can be heated, and then it can be smoked. And DMT is an incredibly powerful spirit molecule. It's very different from ayahuasca, very different from mushrooms and from psilocybin. It's oftentimes its effects are very fast. I have had the opportunity to experience DMT in ceremony. And the ceremony itself, like the actual time that you're in it, about 30 minutes or so. And then so we spend more time really prepping and then integration than actually being in it. So it's very, very, very fast in its length of time, but it's very intense.
Right.
It is akin to a divine rocket ship.
Right.
And it is, boom, you are there. And it's one of those, it's such a beautiful piece. You oftentimes have a lot of people, they share similar stories about what they've seen. They'll talk about seeing aliens. I know that Joe Rogan's a big fan of this. Joe Rogan is. He's had a lot of guests around it. They talk about seeing aliens, seeing very similar looking things. And so it's there's some commonality around it, where I've often found with other psychedelics, there may be more variety, so I'm not sure if that means something there. But it's very powerful. Of course, if you don't know, DMT, it's oftentimes when you pass from this mortal coil, there's a release of that in you. And so as we look, that's why oftentimes it talks about being the spirit molecule and the death molecule. And that it's incredibly beautiful.
Wow. My wife asked the question, how long should you or can you microdose?
So the beautiful thing about microdosing is that it's something that is very sustainable. Once you've dialed in the microdose you're going to use, what that particular substance, remember, they're just like THC, tons of different strains out there of psilocybin stuff we're talking about. And you can microdose generally, right, again, check with everything, safely for long periods of time. Like that's the kind of whole purpose of it. I do know many people that oftentimes they'll cycle it. Maybe 2 days they'll microdose, and 1 day they won't microdose, 2 days on 1 day off, and vice versa. So I think again, consult with a practitioner that you trust and you know, and then once you get to that point, be okay with a bit of experimentation with yourself, and always go slow. You can always do more. You can always ramp it up. Go slow, and understand what you're doing it for.
Right. Okay. Sister Vanessa asked the question: do you source locally?
There are local sources. Obviously, psilocybin has become decriminalized here. You cannot sell it. It's becoming decriminalized in this area, so you can source it locally. And like I said, there's a variety of things that you can do.
Yes, sir. Hey, everybody in the room, we're talking with Brother Henry Mobley. His website is hm3.io. He does this for a living. He can get you going. He can get you going. And Sister Vanessa asked, have you tried ayahuasca? And he talked about that earlier in the podcast, sis, so you could probably go back and hear him relate that experience. That's how he first got into psychedelics.
That was the first one. It was a bit of that may have been a little high up there, but it was fine.
Ask you a question: does the DMT have more of a chemical ingredient to it that's added onto the plant, or is it a natural source?
Well, it's a natural source coming from the toad. So it actually comes from the toad, and that's why when they talked about licking the toad, that's where that comes from.
And will we be seeing like how we see dispensaries on the corners? Will we be seeing like
DMT dispensaries? Well, I think I know. Well, I mean, I think here's the potential is, will we start to see psychedelic offerings that are available outside of the clinical space and or outside of your your community shamanic space? One of the things that we're dealing with right now and with the conversations is, as it becomes more normalized, you look at MDMA therapy, you're looking at ketamine therapy, which are all beautiful things. One of the things that's happening is people are suddenly talking about, well, how do we use them in clinical spaces? Well, as soon as you start talking about clinical spaces, then you start talking about clinical oversight. You start talking about who can be licensed to provide this.
Right.
So now you're starting to talk about a level of control.
Right.
You're starting to talk about a level of monetization. You're starting to talk about a level of privatization, right? Not necessarily good or bad as a talk, but this is what we're starting to talk about. We need to understand that, especially at the root, pun intended, that these substances were available naturally for hundreds of thousands of years.
Which is another reason why they made them illegal and they criminalized them.
Right? And
because
you
they're cheap and they were available everywhere.
Everywhere. And so, and you have, shout out to the brothers and sisters who are out there who have been doing the work for years in their communities with no support. These shamanic folks, and I'm talking about your urban shamans who have made it their mission to support their communities through these substances at the potential detriment of themselves, for moral or legal prosecution, that are doing this good work, right? Our brothers and sisters in the jungles, on the savannas, in the mountains, who've been doing this, and they're not running clinical trials. They're not trying to do this. They've been doing this for the benefit of their communities for millennia.
Right.
And and this is where I always kind of run into my own personal contraction around it, is that oftentimes it's not heralded that this is where everything you're trying to do in the modern day you're getting from this ancient wisdom.
Right.
And it needs to be not only spoken of, it needs to be revered, because that work is so powerful. I was fortunate when I was at MAPS. I was in a colonization.
Break that name down, MAPS.
Sorry, MAPS. So MAPS is the multidisciplinary group that works with psychedelics. You can go to maps.org, maps.org. And a fantastic, powerful group that is really at the forefront of trying to bring psychedelics to us. But as they ran a conference, I was fortunate enough to be sit in with the psychedelic liberation training, and I'm going to get their names wrong. Dr. Sarah Lee and Charlotte. I not remember your last name, but I'm going to look it up in a second. And I'm going to say it. These two women delivered such a powerful piece about colonization and how it intersects with psychedelics.
Right.
And anyone who has an opportunity, please take a look at their website, psychedelicliberationtraining.org, I believe, and incredibly powerful. But that's what we're talking about. These substances are for all.
Right.
End stop. They're for all.
And Apostle makes a point. To your point, psychedelic medicine has been used in indigenous cultures for thousands of years. And now through the therapeutic model of decriminalization, cultural practitioners will be excluded from their own culture. So, in other words, now that they want a license using shrooms, that's going to push everybody who's been doing it for thousands of years out.
It creates a different thing. And Charlotte James, so I apologize, it's James. Thank you. It can become, and what I'm not suggesting is that there isn't room for it. I understand that there is a lot of the great work that many therapists are doing with some of these medicines need to be done in clinical stages. They're working with individuals who have deep-seated challenges, and it needs to be done in a way that is very methodical and meticulous and understood. Even as we try to understand more about how this works, you have to have that work. So it's not an either or, but it can be, I believe, an and also.
Right.
And I don't think that I don't personally believe that legitimacy is necessarily determined by the number of letters after your name.
Right.
Right? That is not the one all. There's much room for that. There's much room for that ancient wisdom that someone has been operating from years. And it is to our detriment if we do not make room for all of that, because at the end of the day, then we start to just put ourselves into the same thing that happened with hemp in the beginning. Like the reason why hemp wasn't legal is because a bunch of people had trees and they didn't want to start utilizing hemp for all the wonderful things that hemp can do. Then all of a sudden, that becomes criminalized, and anything from it becomes criminalized.
Yes, sir. Chad.
Go
ahead.
So have you ever had a bad trip, and if so, how long did it last?
So one thing that's interesting about bad trips kind of have a bad rap.
Because that's all you hear. Like,
it's all you hear about a bad trip. Right. I had a bad trip.
Yeah.
So again, this is coming from a personal state, but I will offer this. Most descriptions I've heard of bad trips, it was just hard.
Right.
It was just hard. That's all.
Right.
Right. And it can be. When you're starting to do this kind of work, when you start to utilize these, especially at those kind of dosages we're talking about, right? When we get into that hero dose, we start talking about these larger doses. It brings up a lot of stuff, and that can be hard. And so when you say you had the bad trip, I think, for at least from my experiences, that's mostly what it is. Now that being said, can you have what they might talk about psychotic breaks, or can you have something that becomes really detrimental? Absolutely, and we saw that back in looking at MK Ultra and some of the results that many of the folks that were experimented on years, during and as they reflected on years later, they had generally bad trips. How long did they last? That's going to be dependent on the person and how much did they take. That's going to be the biggest thing.
And I think that, with that whole MK Ultra piece and people having bad trips, a lot of that occurs also from using shrooms along with alcohol and other illicit drugs as well. Yeah. And so I don't think that can be discounted, you know what I mean? Because that's how shrooms got their rep anyway in terms of being criminalized and basically illegal. You know what I mean?
It's one of those things where you look at, like, any time you start bringing multiple substances into a system, right? No matter what we're talking about, whether we're talking about psychedelics, or we're talking about any other chemicals, whatever, you start adding things together, you are going to have unpredictable results.
Right.
And so it's very, very important.
Right.
And this is why. Say
that again. Say that again. Because that was important.
If you start to add multiple substances or chemicals into any system, you are probably going to get unpredictable results.
Right.
And so what I offer, this is why I offer that before you start down this path, as you start your education around psychedelics, I cannot say this enough, and I'll wear this record out, is, for me, I was fortunate enough that I started off in ceremony. Mm-hmm. I started off under the guise and tutelage of people who were so deeply rooted, both in the understanding of these substances, but also in their reverence to the substances. Right. That, I think, for me, I'm so grateful for that, because I didn't start off with it being casual. I didn't start off with it being, self-ingested. I was fortunate that I had that guidance, and I will always offer that if you have the opportunity, start with that first, and give yourself that, because what you're doing, what you're engaging in, is so powerful. I want you to have the most powerful experiences. I didn't say that I wanted you to have the best experience.
Right.
I didn't say I wanted you to have the brightest experience.
Right.
Right? Because there's oftentimes it's all love, it's all this, everything. Sometimes this is the gateway to your shadow work.
Right.
Sometimes, right?
Wow.
This is allowing you to
Wow.
start into delving into the depths that we are afraid
From the shit you
to
run from.
look at, right?
Right.
This is the ally to moving through that space. So please, I beg of you, give yourself the opportunity to work with someone's. Give yourself the opportunity to make sure that the substances are pure and clean, so that you're making sure you're getting that you're getting the right dosages that you need, and that you're having the integration afterward. Give yourself that, because this is a gift. This is a gift that we have been given, and if you hold it as such, it will serve you in ways that you could not even imagine.
Well,
Wow.
It starts off by you even just referencing it as an ally out the gate, and I've heard you say that several times.
Yes. Remember, this is effectively, and this is where I was deep seated. Ayahuasca is a spirit.
Right.
She is a spirit, and one of the reasons why we do the diet beforehand, why we do all the things, is because she demands she demands your respect. She demands that you do things so that you are prepared to receive this gift from her. And this is how I look at all of these molecules. This is why I revere them as such, and why I revere the practitioners who do them to our service so highly, because they are truly gifts from us.
Can you overdose?
Can you overdose? It is possible to take dosages that are not healthy. Yes, absolutely. So again,
I've never heard of somebody overdose.
you can. We're talking about psychedelics in general, and there are absolutely possibilities for overdosing and long-term effects that may not be serving to you if you ingest large amounts.
Let me ask you another question. You was talking about, ceremonial spaces in South America and, safe spaces. Are there any spaces in this city that provide that for our people?
Those spaces can be made.
Right.
Maybe that's the best way to answer that.
That's the segue. I'm to hm3.io. Henry gonna take care of you, man. Yeah. He gonna take care of you. He gonna walk you through it as much as he can, and if he can't, he's gonna send you or refer you to someone who can. Right.
Right. Well, and there are groups that are forming that are really focused on providing their 501c groups. I believe one called Mile High Psychedelics, I believe. They are specifically targeted with indigenous plants, really tucked into the Native American population that are here. But they're open, as far as what I've read. They're open to all communities that are interested in utilizing the medicines, and of course normalizing the medicines and making them available to all. And then of course the integration that comes around that. So I think as you go through your educational journey, as you start to learn more about this, one of the things that I talk with anyone who's interested is how can we make sure that we reduce harm when utilizing psychedelics. That's incredibly important before you start your journey. And how do you create, part of reducing harm is creating a safe space, both physically when you're going to use that, and then of course your mental and emotional spaces.
Wow. And listen, y'all, Nichelle Tarver's in the building. Peace, Nichelle. And she has an awesome comment. Typical. Once capitalism enters the discussion, medicine is the biggest money grab in this nation. Once they figure out how to monetize anything, the indigenous practitioners are pushed to the side. Why? Because treating illness is not the priority. Keeping patients, customers will always be the priority.
And that is a. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, and to that point, when I onboard a client, most of my clients are in the C-suite space, they're in the executive space, they're business owners. But when I onboard a client, one of the first things I laughingly tell them is I'm trying to get rid of you as fast as possible.
Right.
I never want to create a codependency, right? A need, because you are sovereign beings.
Right.
Anything that I do in my work, you can do on your own. I just help you do it faster.
Right.
I just help you do it while you're doing a bunch of complex things that you're trying to do, right? That's really what the need is. But never get it twisted. Never let anyone disempower you. Never let anyone tell you that you cannot do. That may be the greatest lie that is always told. You do not always need someone else. It can always start with you. Yes, you have allies. Yes, ask for help. Yes, get educated, but don't get it twisted. You need to be hyper accountable for everything you do in your life. And by doing that, and doing work like this, and filling yourself, I'd say that selfishness can be the new sexy. Because if you learn and you fill yourself, you will overflow, and we will all drink from that fountain.
Right. Woo. Henry Mobley's in the building. Henry Mobley's in the building. Henry, I've been telling them where you at all this whole time. Well, go ahead and tell them where they can find you.
So of course you can find me at hm3.io. It's Henry Mobley III is my name, so hm3.io. You can find me on Instagram, hm3 coaching. So you can find me there as well. I apologize, I'm just starting off with some of my digital footprint around my work, so it's going to be works in progress, but you can definitely contact me easily, and we can take it from there.
This is such a beautiful topic, man. This brother right here was in the chat. He just decided to just let me just come on out here.
My question is, we talking about black trauma and healing black trauma.
Sure.
Can you touch on that? There's a couple more questions.
Sure.
Crazy. Why is Colorado leading that with the cannabis, and now they try to legalize it? Psychedelics for what they
Yeah. So I'll start with the second question first. So that's one of the reasons why I moved here from California. And California is doing their own great work as well. For whatever reason, Colorado has been able to start, helping to lead this country, both from cannabis and even in the psilocybin space. I'm not sure why. I haven't really delved into politics, but I'm super grateful for it. Right? I'm really grateful for the work that's being done around that space, and I want to keep it up and support it. I'm not sure why it's really centralized here, but it's been fantastic. As far as talking about black trauma, let me start by saying that every community has its level of traumas. And I think it's important that it's easy for everyone to start saying black trauma, this trauma, that trauma, right? I think it's understanding that every community can have those traumas. And so how do these substances help with that and the healing of that? And again, I'm only going to speak from my own personal experiences, but there's a lot of writing out there that you can read. My traumas, for me personally, and both as a black man, through psilocybin, have been healed first and foremost by helping me to remove myself from being defined by those traumas.
Right.
Brother Herman and I, we spoke about 350 years of our people having to ride those waves of slavery, and that many of the things that have been done have not been for the help of it foundationally.
Right.
They have been band-aids, right, to try to soothe the pain. And it's not that I discount those efforts, but ultimately, and this is where the pinnacle of the work that I do, is that you have to go back to your own beginning, to your own foundation. If we want to heal our traumas, I offer that we first cannot be shackled. They cannot be an excuse. They cannot be a definition of us. You have to still see yourself as this divine being, this sovereign being. Gods are not defined, goddesses are not defined by anything other than what they choose to be. So while the trauma is real, and because of it being centuries long, it has infiltrated our DNA. So our children's children are operating from it. This is why these allies, these medicines are so important to us, and while we should never be kept from them, we are still conscious beings. We still get to make a decision. This is why the mother runs back into the burning building to save the baby, even though she knows the building's on fire, because she can override our patterns, we can override our instincts, we can override the definitions that some other group decided to put on us. So if you are not doing the work, if you're saying I can't do this, I can't do that because of this, that is simply you choosing not to be your own divine host.
Bam. Bam! Man, we don't have enough time, man. The show is over.
Show been over.
The show is over, y'all.
Don't get me up on a soapbox.
Hey, listen, man. Y'all go to hm3.io, man. And you know what I'm saying? Build with Brother Henry. Let's heal ourselves. That's really what it's all about, ultimately. That's what it's about. Because we are absolutely the gods. We done ran up out of time, of course. So, man, astar2.com.
Thank you so
Get
much.
your appointment. Don't come here without an appointment. Thank you, Brother Henry. Final Call. Make sure you get your latest edition of the Final Call newspaper right here at the barbershop. Rest in power, Brother Minister Jabril Muhammad, an angel of Allah, an angel among men. May Allah be pleased. We getting out of here, man. We're gonna have to do it again, Brother Henry. We're gonna have to write the time.
Thank you, Brother Henry, for doing this. Like, thank you so much.
Y'all get Look, we always say it, man. We always say it. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Peace. We out. We see y'all on the next go round.
How we doing?
That was fire.
Beautiful, brother.
My man.
That's how y'all tag it. Y'all stepped it up today.
Really dig the video. And also subscribe. That way you'll get a bell ding, a notification every time we post something. And it also helps us with regards to the algorithm that, your people like to run. So go ahead and do that. And we'll see y'all on the next. Peace, everybody. It's your brother Herman Supreme Style Muhammad. Just wanted to drop in and let you know what we have going on. In addition to our community work that we've been doing for years, and in addition to being the sole proprietor of Supreme Style Barbershop, where we've been serving the community for close to 25 years, now we've partnered up with an insurance company called Ethos in an effort to help our people with life insurance. That's something that we all need. I know it's something that we don't want to think about, but it is something that we all need if we want to leave anything to our loved ones when we leave this space. So do me a favor, click on the link or go to our website, astar2.com, and click on the Ethos page. We'll see you on the other side.